Ladies and gentlemen, another big round of applause for our very first session, day one of the Hindu Lit for Life 2025. Over to KC Vijaya Kumar.
So welcome to the world of snake, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, an absolutely rollicking start to a Saturday. Just that it happens to be a Saturday morning, not a Saturday night. So to my left, I have Romulus Whitaker. A very cliched way of saying is he's a snake man of India, but he's much more than that. And you'll discover that when you read this book. It's a memoir, and there's so many layers to him, which has been adroitly put across by his wife, Janaki Lenin, co-author. And before we dive into this book, Rom wants to show some fun stuff. I mean, basically he parting the seas, he leaping across the Himalayas, you know, he doing this 100-meter sprint in the Amazon. Basically, it's Bahubali Part 3 Rom's version. Could you have the AV, please?
Expert Romulus Whitaker has committed his life to conservation. Long ago, he realized protecting India's snakes would be impossible without first factoring in human welfare. Armed with this new data and more than 3 decades of field experience, Rom is about to investigate the natural history behind these incredible statistics.
200 million guns are loaded.
How'd you like that, monkey?
12 feet of venomous snake. You know, this is the super snake. In comparison, an anaconda is like a big earthworm.
This is the story of one man's quest to save the king.
Southern India, so it's perfectly natural for me, as far as I'm concerned, to settle here. And it has all the elements that I love. The warm weather, plenty of reptiles, good people, good hot food.
So let me start off with Janaki. She's one of the most evocative nature writers in the country. I mean, you have Neha Sinha in Delhi and you have Janaki here. Sometimes nature writing can get very dense, can get very nerdy, you know, and she kind of simplifies it, writes elegantly well. And it's not necessarily about the tigers and the big ones, the elephants and stuff. It's about termites and it's about toads hopping in the backyard and stuff like that. Very accessible wildlife writing. Janaki, the question I want to ask you is, I mean, as a spouse, you know much about Rom, but did you discover extra layers to him, his early life, when you co-wrote this book? That's the first part. The second part is, was there any filtration? Did you ever feel like, because it's a book with what's and all, it's pretty open, it's a very transparent book. Did you ever tell Rom, do you want to reveal so much? Do you want to be so naked in front of your audience?
Audible, yeah? Okay, so I started writing in a column for the Hindu. I owe my career to the newspaper. Primarily because when I was growing up, I didn't have that relationship with local nature that I would have liked. I was reading Enid Blyton and, about European nature. And so, but the one thing I would grant Enid Blyton is she wrote about hares and rabbits and toads and frogs and things like that. So whatever everyone might say now in hindsight about her failings as a writer, she really captivated me in how she wrote about the small creatures, like, the birds that come to a feeder. I even set up a bird feeder on the terrace of my parents' house and was so disappointed that only crows showed up and not other birds. So that is primarily what drove me, and I wanted readers to have that relationship with what they see around them. They're not seeing tigers and elephants and, big mega animals. So it was very much what they would see and how to help them connect with that wildlife. Okay, so coming to the book, I think I was very clear that Rom had to be vulnerable and reveal his failings if the book was going to be captivating for a reader. Like, it's a typical storytelling thing. Your hero or the protagonist has to overcome things, and that comes from revealing your failings. So it's very much in that mold.
Was there any surprises for you? I mean, in terms of his past life? Or you knew everything?
Not really. We've all, at least in the family and his friends, have heard these stories so many million times. Now it's all on you guys. You get to read these stories.
Yeah.
Now I can say it's all in the book if he starts narrating something.
Rom, I just want to ask you, the structure of the book. I mean, usually with an autobiography, it kind of starts with almost like a flashback. When you are here, you've done the Crocodile Bank, the Snake Park, the King Cobra Research Center in Agam Bay, and so on, so on, so forth. And then there's a backstory, right? But you start off from the US where you were born, and then it builds up. And it kind of ends when you again return to India after your university stint in the US. How did you arrive at that thing that it'll be a part one phase as a memoir? And I also want to know about airing your vulnerabilities, because there's this beautiful passages dealing with your father. You have an estranged relationship with him. And you don't say it in so many words. You don't wallow in self-pity. It's very straightforward. I mean, we feel the angst, but you just make it very, very light. You just deal with it. And it's something I've sensed in Ruskin Bond and in his books. He's very close to his dad. His dad passed away early, and then the way he writes it, it's got a very light touch. You feel the depth of his grief, but he doesn't really put in so many words, right? And the reverse happens. I mean, he didn't like his stepfather very much. So it was an estranged relationship. So in one of his short fictions, the stepfather gets killed. I think he's dumped in a well or something, right? So can you just talk about dealing with your vulnerabilities, and how you kind of wrote about it in the book?
Yeah, it was a bit of a touchy. Am I audible?
Is he audible?
Yeah? No. How's this? Is this better? Okay. Yeah, it was touchy. I didn't know really how to write about my father because I didn't know him very well. And I did feel a big hole in my heart. But I was just so lucky that at a young age, my mother remarried this incredible guy called Rama Chattopadhyaya. And I didn't have a clue of how to pronounce this long Bengali name when I was a kid. It took a few years. But, and then coming to India and meeting his family, a whole new life opened up, a whole new family opened up. And what a family. I mean, Kamala Devi, Harindranath, these people, they are legendary. And of course, I didn't know they were legendary, but they were fun people to be with. Harindranath was the craziest dude in the world. And if you know anything about him and his poetry and his songs, and even his movies, I mean, he's a crazy man. He was a crazy man. And what a lucky boy I was. And we're drifting far away from my real love, which of course was snakes and all these kind of things. But yeah, as far as the personal life went, I came from a loving family in America to a loving family in India. What a lucky kid.
I mean, I love the references to your schooling in Ooty and Kodai, and they're two worlds apart. I mean, Ooty was very structured, regimented, and you make a reference to the principal and said, and he's right here, and then you would want to give him a sock. And Kodai was much more fun and biking and stuff. Could you speak a bit about that, of tucking in the bed, the ritual?
Yeah, I'll tell you, in this day and age, which school would allow a kid to have a gun, number one? Which school would allow a kid to have an 8-foot python living under his bed, number two? I'm not going to go into 3 and 4 because you'll have to read that to find out. But yeah, what a life that was. Kodaikanal was incredible. Okay, it was a Christian school, and I was never very much into religion of any kind. In fact, I was never much into any kind of organized anything. And maybe that's what set me apart from a lot of my friends, but I probably influenced them some negatively, much to the consternation of their parents, of course, who, but I don't regret that, and I'm sure they don't either.
There's this beautiful passage in this book which deals with your return to the US to join the university. I mean, we live in an age when nationalism is massive and we are kind of split into sections, us versus them, he versus she. We're all put in boxes. And you're more Indian than most of us Indians put together in your spirit. I mean, there's this beautiful passage where you land in the airport and you feel very lost, right? I would love if Janaki could read that bit. Could you?
Yeah.
I think 167.
Is it? Yeah. Okay. So Rom came to India at the age of 8. He went to school in Kodaikanal, and so 8 years later he goes back to the States. And in that period of time he was in India, he never stepped foot in the States. So this is the first time he's returning. In July 1961, I flew out of Bombay via Cairo and Rome. I don't remember any details of the journey itself, but the trepidation and uncertainty that filled my being as I disembarked from the plane at LaGuardia Airport in New York are a stark memory. I spoke with an American accent from years of growing up with American kids in Kodai and held an American passport. I didn't stand out among the hordes of white people thronging the terminal. Nobody gave me a second glance, but I felt as if I belonged to a breed apart. The States may have been my country of birth, but it was foreign. I was more an Indian at heart than a whitey. This cognitive dissonance has lasted all my life. A bored immigration officer stamped my passport, and I was relieved at passing what had seemed like a test. I headed outside the terminal to the curb where cars and taxis were lined up. I looked at every slowing vehicle, hoping it was Dad, come to pick me up. Before leaving India, I had seen a few old black and white photographs that Ma had, but I wouldn't be able to spot him in a crowd. I couldn't imagine how he'd recognize me either. What if he's forgotten when I'm arriving? I shifted from one leg to the other, wondering what to do. Should I call him from a payphone? Wrangling with a contraption I had never used before made me even more nervous. A car pulled up in front of me. But to my disappointment, it wasn't a middle-aged man who hopped out, but a stylish, pretty girl. She walked up to me and put out her hand. "Hi, Breezy, welcome home," she said. Breezy was his nickname at home. "I'm Carol, your stepsister, and this is my boyfriend, Val." My jaw might have hung open with astonishment. I didn't know I had a stepsister.
Thank you. Rom, I mean, whatever we know about you, it's the larger picture. It's not granular details. It's about the Crocodile Bank and what you are willing to reveal about yourself, or what we could pick from her columns in the Hindu. I mean, we knew that you guys were staying in the outskirts of Chengalpat in a farmhouse. I guess there was a resident leopard that you used to visit in the night. Yeah? And now you guys are staying in the fringes of the Nagaroli forest in Karnataka. I mean, so you just can't run away from the forest, right? And now you write a book where you're pretty explicit about your life. You're growing up your years, your dalliance with drugs, right? What gave you the impetus to say, okay, this is my time to do a memoir?
I think Yeah, I think Janaki reference to that. All my elderly life, or older life, let's say, people my friends and so on, I sort of regale them with various tales of my life and stuff, and invariably they say, why don't you put it all down in a book? A book? That's a lot of work. But luckily, I'm married to a writer, and yeah, so it was really teamwork, fantastic teamwork.
Now I'll digress a bit. I mean, how do you look at, in terms of the forest cover of India? I mean, it's kind of being degraded. There are new policies that are in the annual there where you could actually do mining in forests. Roads are cutting across. I mean, closer to your place in Nagarole, there's a huge tussle between Kerala and Karnataka over this night ban on buses ferrying between Bandipur and Mudumalai and Muttanga and stuff like that. How do you look at this eco-space right now?
I think there's a really weird dichotomy here because, yeah, there are pressures on India because we need development, we need to get the poor, the kind of things that we enjoy, for example. So we need development, but at the same time, all the natural resources we have to be protected. What a strange balance we have to meet. So yeah, we blame the government for a lot of this, the negative stuff that's going on. But let's remember that India still has, besides the cheetah, which actually we do have now, we have every one of the major predators that we had 1,000 years ago, which can't be said of most of the rest of the world. Most of the rest of the world, they've been wiped out. So in a way, we're doing pretty good, but in a way, we also have to be really careful, and we have to keep being activists. We have to keep the pressure on to save our resources, to save our wildlife.
You've also been a seaman in this book. Could you say something about that? I mean, in being in a ship and...
Yeah, well, yeah, I thought Janaki could read a little passage about something that you may not know that I was involved in. I joined the Merchant Marines in the United States in order to try to make a living.
So he goes to university in the US and drops out after 1 year of that, and then he has to earn a living. Because the deal was his father was going to pay his tuition fees, and then the father says, if you're not going to study medicine, I'm not going to support you. And Ram says, I'm not going to do medicine. So, and he has this real struggle to study and earn a living, and then he drops out. So this is 1962. And I'm reading censored excerpts because we have children in the audience. One night I dreamt of being aboard a ship of fools abandoned at sea. When I woke, the waves boomed as they smashed against the bulkhead, and the 4 life jackets I had wedged between me and the sides of the bunk to keep me from rolling over the edge had loosened. The curtain that afforded privacy when pulled across fluttered with each starboard roll. Seconds later, the massive copper propellers chopped through the air, sending a scary shudder from stern to stem. The ship lurched, and 2 of the jackets popped from the bunk and slid across the crazily tilted floor. I muttered profanities under my breath, careful not to wake up Pineapple asleep in the next bunk. I needn't have bothered, since he could sleep through a typhoon. The radium dial of my cheap watch read 6:15. Another 2 hours before my shift started. Neither could I doze nor could I stay in my bunk. I went to the head and took a leak without watering my feet. It's a question of rhythm, but sometimes the sea likes to play jokes on you. After splashing cool water on my face from the spring-loaded faucet over the round steel sink, I staggered out. Steadying myself with both hands on the railings lining the companionway and climbing the ladder to the upper deck was fun. Take a step, stop and hang on. Another step, stop and hang on. No one was in the galley at that hour. The cooks hadn't cooked anything for the second day in a row. It was impossible to keep a pot steady on the stove in this weather. I slipped off the fridge clamp and took a salami and cheese sandwich wrapped in wax paper. After sloshing a cup of strong black brew from the thermos rattling in its secure holder, I drank without scalding my lips. Then he goes up on the deck. It was almost daylight now. When the ship crested another 40-foot swell, the deck swung down. The vessel shuddered as it slid on the trough of the massive wave. I never knew a ship could take such a beating. A big pod of pilot whales breached from the wall of the wave. I yelled, "There she blows!" 4 guys tottered up the ladder as the boat crested another swell, and the 5 of us stood on the pitching deck, holding onto the railing and drinking in the sight of these sleek whales cruising alongside our wallowing hulk in the light of the dawn. After they sped away, I went below to get ready for my shift. The engines throbbed through the deck plates, and the cold sun lit the rigging, the capstan heads, and the rusty railing. Being a sailor was fun at first, but now I had enough of the endless expanses of ocean and monotonous work. Memories of fishing and Hoosick and hunting in Wyoming kept me going as we rolled with the swells. I sang loudly whatever took my fancy, maybe a Presley or Dylan song, the Beatles, or even the Kingston Trio.
Here's an example. We come on the sloop John B., my grandfather and me. Around Nassau town we did roam, drinking all night, got into a fight. Yeah, I feel so broke up, I wanna go home.
Rom, I mean, what has been the most bizarre situation you've ever been involved in, involving with the wildlife? The most crazy stuff you got mixed up with? It could be a king cobra, it could be a rat snake, whatever. Was there anything that sticks out in your memory?
It's all normal. Yeah, I was enamored by snakes from the time I was literally 3 or 4 years old. And as you will read in the book, I grew up in the first years of my life in northern New York State. And when I brought a snake home to my mother, the strangest, weirdest mother you could even ever imagine, how much we... About the? Oh yeah, we'll do that. So that's how it started out. Well, over the years, as I sort of grew into becoming the snake man, I also got involved with other reptiles. And one of them was really spectacular. I got the opportunity to go to an island called Komodo. And there I met the largest lizard in the world. And I didn't only meet it, I got chased by one. I have no idea, maybe it was my bad breath or, BO or whatever it was, but that lizard chased me for a considerable distance. And luckily they caught it on film. I think you saw a little clip of that earlier. And no one could explain it. The guys who work on Komodo looked at me as really strangely, "We don't know why it chased you. I mean, you got something wrong with you or something." Maybe it just wanted to make friends with me. Well, now we have Komodo dragons at the Madras Crocodile Bank, so don't forget to have a look at them. They are the most remarkable lizards in the world. Very smart. Man, I wish I could have one at home. I really do.
Rom, I mean, a lot of them who assembled here, in fact, some of the kids who took autographs from, on the book cover from you, they were asking you and Janaki, I mean, they were asking her about My Husband and Other Animals. Is there a sequel or, or a third part? And a lovely title, by the way. And they were asking you about a sequel to this book, because it ends with you returning to India. It has no reference to Crocodile Bank, there's no reference to Snake Park, there's no reference to Agumbe, what you did with the king cobras there. It ends with you returning home, right? And then you're in a very nostalgic phase, you're sitting there and mulling about your past and stuff. So there is a hint for a sequel. Could you say something about it?
Yeah, well, I'm now over 80 years old, so I've been through a lot and done a lot. And when we first started writing what was called my autobiography or memoir or whatever you want to call it, we thought it would be 1 volume. Then we said, no, it's going to be 2 volumes. And now it's going to be 3 volumes. So we're working hard on the 2nd volume. And can we have a look at what we're going to be talking about? I think meeting the Irula people, the tribal people of Tamil Nadu, was one of the most fantastic experiences of my life, because here was a whole group of people who knew a lot about snakes. And everyone needs a peer group, right? Well, these were my peer group.
Could you have the AV, please?
We went to the United States with the Irulas to try to deal with the pythons there. The pythons are making havoc in the Everglade Park of South Florida. And the Irulas were going over there to help solve the problem. And here's a clip showing exactly what we were up to.
This is a trailer for a second book.
Okay, what are you going to do?
Kia.
Okay, let's bag it up. We can. Give it a try. We'll get this on video.
Ridiculous.
That's absolutely fine. So the floor is open for Q&A. I mean, just keep the questions crisp. Yeah, the gentleman there.
Hello.
Yeah.
I'm a retired lecturer. My name is Ganesh. How common are the snake bites in India? And did you include your experiences, those who are bitten by the snake, and put it in their own words, or you just generally wrote? Thank you.
It looks like what you've asked about snakebite. Well, I was co-author of a paper which showed that 58,000 people are killed in India by snakebite every year. I don't know if you're aware of this. And so we've been working very hard, and I've been working very hard on trying to mitigate snakebite in India. But you're going to have to read volume 3 to get all the details.
Any other questions? Raise your hand. Yeah.
Very good morning. Actually, my question is, Rom sir was talking about his mom. Actually, you told my mom encouraged you to do the snakes and this. But now many are, say, I want to take a career in wildlife, or especially snakes. What is the psychological barrier that stops the parents to not enter the sons in the wildlife career?
Yeah, I think reading the book will be a good start. But yeah, I mean, wildlife is just so fascinating, and that's probably reason why so many people are sitting here listening to us. But yeah, I said that I had a very unusual mother, and it was very true. Most mothers, when if a kid brings a snake home, they're not going to say, wow, how beautiful it is, like my mother did. And especially if you're living in India where there are a lot of venomous snakes. So let's be a little bit easy and take it easy on kids when they're interested in wildlife. It has to be a slow and educated development. I mean, you know, it has to be carefully done, but certainly encourage them.
Thank you. Waiting for the second part.
Any more questions? Yeah.
Hi, Rom and Janaki. It's nice to see you here. I know this is part of your second book, but if you had to sort of advise how the traditional knowledge of a community like Irulas could be used for the betterment of environment and their own livelihood, what would you suggest apart from the snake catching skills?
Rat catching. The Irulas are incredible at catching snakes, but they're also incredible at rat catching. Back in the 80s, we did a project funded by the Department of Science and Technology. The Irulas caught 240,000 rats over a period of time and recovered 5 tons of grain from the rat holes. We went to the Pest Control India Limited, some of the big companies, and said, look, you guys, why use poisons when you can use the Irulas? And I still believe in it very strongly. Now, if there's anyone out there willing to I'm running out of energy, folks, but if there's any of you out there willing to come on board and try to get this started again, I think it's a great idea. Let's catch those rats. Let's not use poison. Yep.
I have an addendum to that. So what you saw just now, the Irulas catching pythons in the Everglades, is really a proof of concept. There are invasive species affecting habitats around the world, like the brown tree snake in Guam Island. It's finished off like 12 species of endemic birds, and it's attacking the last few remaining species. So if you have, and there are, in Canary Islands, you have king snakes, right? Yeah, so there are invasive species like this affecting native wildlife around the world, and the Irulas could, even though, like when we went to the Everglades, the big doubt was, can they function in an ecosystem they are not familiar with? And they showed that they don't have to know all the birds and all the snake species to target particular species. So they can become an international invasive species expert.
One last question, and we wind up.
Good morning. I'm Srinidhi, and I recently graduated from for a master's in wildlife science. And as part of it, I did study snakes in Chennai. And I wanted to ask, like, do you have any advice on how like we can go and record the species further? Because there is a huge change in what we see from like 20, 40 years ago to what we see now.
Could you just repeat the question once more? On the second part.
Do you have any advice on how we should proceed with like the protection and conservation efforts within Chennai itself after like the 20 and the difference we see from like the past 20 years?
Like the evolving conservation thing. The evolving conservation pattern compared to 20 years, 30 years.
Yeah, that's a very complex question. I'm just so happy you're into wildlife. That's probably the first thing that's going to save India, is to have a lot of wonderful young people doing what they love best. But I just go back in history a little bit and say that when I first started out and we started the Madras Snake Park, there were very few people who were interested in snakes in particular. Plenty of people interested in birds. No, I'm just kidding. I love birds too. But yeah, over the last sort of 20, 30 years, there's been a great increase in people interested in wildlife in general, and getting into the complexities of wildlife versus people. Right now, human-animal conflict seems to be much more important than the word we used to use, conservation. So that's something that has to be addressed very, very seriously. So, I mean, you mentioned that, well, we live in a place called Ratnapuri in Karnataka, where leopards are regular visitors even to the village, and people are learning to live with them. So it's very important that we keep up this hard work. Keep it up. Thank you.
And that brings a close to this wonderful session in the morning. Thanks, Rom. Thanks, Janaki. Truly engrossing.
Thanks very
Thank
much,
you.
everybody.
Thank you for coming so early in the morning on a Saturday.
I think they definitely need a bigger round of applause. Come on, what a fantastic start to day one of the Hindu Lit for Life 2025. Big thank you to Romulus Whitaker, Janaki Lenin, and of course, KC Vijaya Kumar. Thank you.